Jennifer Wild, and I'm going to be talking about the DBT skill of walking the middle path. The important thing before we start talking about the skill of walking the middle path is to review the dialectics and make sure we remember the things the dialectics teach us. Dialectics teach us there is always more than one way to do something, more than one way to see a situation and solve a problem, that all people have unique qualities and different points of view, that change is the only constant thing, and that two things that seem alike or opposite can actually be true at the same time. Remembering the dialectic, the middle path is a skill that is in place to help us get along better with others and improve our ability to see the middle of those two extremes and find a way to seek the middle path as it describes. It's a way to expand our thoughts and our ways of considering situations. It's also to get unstuck from standoffs or disagreements, and it's a way to be more flexible and more approachable with the people that we're interacting with. It also helps us avoid making assumptions or blaming others when things are not working well. So it is about us seeking understanding of the different points of view of the dialectics and then being able to establish the middle path. Often when parents are looking at the dialectics, there's two things that we talk about: people that are too loose with the guidelines or too strict with the guidelines. And what the dialectic helps us understand when we're seeking that middle path is that there can be clear rules and ways to enforce them, and at the same time a willingness to renegotiate some issues and to discuss some issues and don't overuse consequences. Another example of that is when people make light of behavioral problems, or on the other hand, make too much of what would be considered typical adolescent behavior. When we're able to walk the middle path, we recognize that when a behavior crosses the line, we do need to have some consequences and set some limits for that behavior, but at the same time, we can recognize which behaviors are related to typical adolescent behavior. The important thing now would be to review what is typical adolescent behavior, because there are generally some shifts in the way kids are interacting with their world, in the way their perceptions are once they enter into those teen years. Some typical things that go with adolescence are increased moodiness, increased self-consciousness, and by that I mean they often feel like they are under a spotlight and are getting a lot more attention that may not be what others are seeing, others' perspective, that they have increased dawdling, so increased distractibility is probably the best way to describe that. They often are less focused than they had been previously on tasks, that they have more parent-adolescent conflict. That parent-adolescent conflict is related to their developmental phase, which is about them individuating from the family system. So they are having more conflict with their parents because that's part of their developmental process. They also are experimenting more with alcohol and drugs and cigarettes, which can influence their perspective. There's more argumentativeness, more idealism, and also more criticism or being opinionated. Those things are important to remember because when we're seeking to find the middle path, it's important to remember that the teen's perspective will often be different than the adults because they are going through those processes and they do get kind of stuck in those ways of thinking. Some other things that are also part of teen behavior that we don't see prior to that point in their development is they do need a lot of privacy. Teens often seek a lot more privacy, and where that may come across to parents as sneaky or withholding, it again is typical of adolescent behavior. So as you're seeking to find a middle path in your relationship and in your interactions with an adolescent, it's important to remember that developmentally that's part of what the adolescent is dealing with. Moving into how to find the middle path, an important part of the dialectic, an important part of seeking the middle path is finding a way to validate the other person's opinion, thoughts, or beliefs. What validation does is it communicates to the other person that their feelings, thoughts, and beliefs are important, that they make sense, and that we can understand them. What parents often get hung up with validation is they often believe that validation equates to agreement, That is not the case. Validating somebody else's opinions, beliefs, and thoughts that are different from our own does not necessarily need to equate to agreement with those perspectives. But what it does is it shares that you have an understanding that they are different than yours, and you can do that in a non-judgmental manner. You don't have to make any sort of opinions or judgments based on those differences, just recognizing that they're there. When we validate others, we show them we are listening. We show them that we understand. We show them that we can be non-judgmental and that we do want to work in the relationship with them. We also can disagree without having a big conflict. Once you validate somebody else's beliefs and thoughts and opinions that are different from yours, you can move to a place of finding the middle path where you agree that yes, there are two extremes, but those two extremes can exist together. They don't have to be in conflict. The other important part of validation for parents is to remember that we also need to validate ourselves. That it is important for parents to also share their feelings, thoughts, and behave in ways that meet with what they would like other people to validate, that they don't always, or even often have to then give in to their adolescent's perception and their way of seeking things. So to summarize the middle path, it's important to validate the other person's perspective, share yours as well, and then find a way for both of those two dialectics to exist. So you can seek a way to have an and instead of an instead of or.